Can you fill me in as to what's happening in Houston, please? I feel like we need an update with Deshaun Watson. What's going on?
Yeah, so, I think the question was whether or not he was going to be put in the exempt list. And, I just playing devil's advocate here. If you were Deshaun Watson's camp and you were trying to expedite a trade, you would try to make it as uncomfortable on the Texans as you possibly can. And so, the commissioner has the power to put Deshaun on the exempt list. He has to meet conditions. And I know if a player's camp were to push hard against the idea that a guy goes on an exempt list, the league might back down. So, my read here, I think Deshaun Watson and his camp are trying to expedite a trade out of Houston. And I think by showing up, he makes things uncomfortable on the Texans. By remaining off the exempt list, it makes things uncomfortable on the Texans. And, I can tell you, Suzy, that it's a difficult one because if you're Nick Caserio, their first-year general manager, it's really, really hard to sell the idea of trading a 25-year-old franchise quarterback who's signed for the next 5 years for anything less than a historic return. And right now, because there are so many questions legally and with the league, I think he's going to have a hard time getting everything back that he wants. And so, I think over the next few days, there's probably going to be some sort of effort to see what sort of return he can get. But I can tell you, like, Nick Caserio is pretty determined right now not to give Watson up at a discount.
And yet at the same time, Albert Breer, how do you try to work out a trade for a guy that you just don't know what's going to happen? You're putting a player out there that could be injured at any time if he actually does play, and if he's actually not bluffing or if they decide to put him back out there. But how do you even figure out the trade value when you have an open investigation? I mean, at some point, the commissioner could decide to put him on the list.
Well, and that's the thing, it's like, and you don't know. I mean, legally going through this, and I'm not, I mean, this guy, before all of this was a guy who you'd say deserved the benefit of the doubt, so I definitely don't want to presume any sort of guilt here, and I don't want to, on the other side of it, completely dismiss it's just we don't know. You know what I mean? I can't have a take on what happened because I don't know. But, yeah, I think there's certainly that part of it where, you have the 22 lawsuits out there. You don't know what could happen if there's a settlement, what the next step might be after that. And then, you don't know what the league's going to do. So, if you're another team, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, here's a generational quarterbacking talent, 25 years old, signed for the next 5 years, but there is that level of uncertainty. And so, I think for each of the teams, there's that. And then on top of that, Suzy, this is one that, you got to get ownership sign-off on, too. Because I know there are certain teams where if there's an ongoing investigation like this happening, it's going to completely be a non-starter no matter how good the player is, And so it's tricky for a number of different reasons for other teams that might be considering trading for him. And that's a huge part of why, Houston getting the sort of haul back for him that you would expect for a player like Deshaun Watson might be challenging.
Albert, that's so interesting you said that because I'm listening to all these people opine on radio and on television about where he's going to go and Tua, this and the other. But that's the issue, is that you now have a quarterback with a lot of money coming in who's only 25, but 22 allegations. It's not criminal. It is civil. Most civil does get settled, but it is a huge gamble right now and in unprecedented water here, it looks like, or an unprecedented territory, because again, it's every way you look at it, it's a gamble.
Yeah, and it's and remember too, the other part of it for an owner is this guy is, the minute he walks in the door, the face of your franchise, right? Bigger face than the coach, bigger face than the owner, bigger, the face of your franchise is Deshaun Watson, and you have to be comfortable riding through whatever's ahead with him, and so that's a gigantic part of it, no question about it. And I think that like I said, if he gets through this, you have a generational talent, 25 years old, the most important position in sports, and you have him under contract for an extended period of time, and if you get that position settled, that can mean job security for everybody in the building for a decade. So it's just. It's very, very complicated, and it's complicated for teams, like the Eagles, like the Dolphins, like the Panthers, like the Broncos, that would absolutely be in line for a player like this at that position if it weren't for everything else that was happening.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.